Now, last year, a young woman living in Poland went viral online after claiming to be the missing toddler Madeleine McCann.
She gained more than 1 million followers, but it wasn't long before Julia Wandelt then fell victim to anger and hostility. And as part of a new podcast series exploring extraordinary cases of hate online, she has been speaking to our disinformation and social media correspondent, Mariana Spring.
Julia Wandelt from Poland has gone viral this week after saying that she's Madeleine McCann.
Last year, TikTok users began speculating about an Instagram account called I Am Madeleine McCann, created by this woman, Julia.
Well, let's take a look at some of what you have posted to social media.
Any missing person case can spawn conspiracy theories, hate and impersonations on social media, seemingly none more so than Madeleine's disappearance. Julia's account was the most viral I'd seen, so I tracked her down to an address in Poland.
Oh yeah, okay, let's do that.
After careful consideration and conversations with me, she agreed to tell her side of the story.
I knew my goal, I knew my purpose, because I wanted to know who I am.
Julia says a traumatic childhood left her with patchy memories. She thought she might be adopted, and then she came across the McCann case. She also discovered a physical similarity to Madeleine, a rare eye abnormality.
I think I can be this person, I can be this girl. But no one treated me seriously.
When she went to authorities with her concerns, she says she didn't feel listened to, so she turned to social media instead. Her account soon had more than 1 million followers. Some sent support, even gifts. Others sent abuse.
I knew that there will be people who will not believe me, who will hate me, but I didn't expect that I will get death threats.
Thank you very much for coming.
Dr. John Sinnott has studied the obsessive online interest in the McCann case. He was not surprised Julia's profile went viral.
You have a scenario of somebody looking for something, somebody finding something, and then them believing or thinking that this is who they are. And then ultimately, because of the nature of who she was claiming to be, that very quickly then takes a life of its own out of her hands.
Eventually, a DNA test showed Julia was Polish. She stepped away from her account and she apologised to the McCanns. Those connected to Madeleine's parents, who have been affected by some of Julia's content, say they are willing to accept Julia's apology and forgive her for the situation that unfolded online. According to the Find Madeleine campaign, Kate and Jerry McCann do not use social media. Social media can destroy you. That's the lesson Julia's learnt. Online, there don't seem to be guardrails to stop everyone involved being harmed. It's only offline where understanding seems possible. If you were doing it again, what would you do differently?
I think I wouldn't go to social media because it can influence you in a bad way, and it wasn't a good idea.
Mariana Spring, BBC News.
Well, Mariana joins us in the studio now. Morning.
Morning.
That is, I mean, I remember when that case went viral, but an extraordinary story to start off with.
It really, really was. And I had so many messages from people saying, what is going on here? Who's behind this account? Why has this happened? And it might sound really quite extraordinary to lots of people watching, but actually this happens quite a lot. Whenever someone goes missing or there's a disappearance, it tends to spawn conspiracy theories, hate, speculation and impersonation. And no case more so than Madeleine McCann's disappearance, which has generated a huge volume of obsessive social media content, even now. And, you know, it's years and years after she first disappeared. And so with this case, because it was the most viral I'd seen, one of the most shocking cases I'd seen, I wanted to find Julia. I spent quite a lot of time trying to track her down. She'd removed this I Am Madeleine McCann Instagram account. It had been taken down. At this point, she'd stepped back from it. But I managed to find her personal account. We had several conversations, and she decided she wanted to kind of tell her side of the story. And I think it's really important, and certainly that's the focus of this podcast series, but to understand not just people's motives, but also their regrets and whether we can understand stuff when we take it offline.
I think a lot of people, when they first heard about that particular account on social media, assumed that she was the one who was doing the trolling, that she was trolling the family, the relatives of Madeleine McCann. But she genuinely believed that she might be Madeleine.
And I think that's what's so complex about cases like this, is that actually you know, when you actually do take it offline, you sit down with someone, you unpick what's happened, you can start to understand, okay, I can see maybe how you convinced yourself of this. But nonetheless, it caused really serious harm. It causes serious harm to people who are close to and know the McCanns and knew Madeleine. It causes really serious harm to the people involved, like Julia, who became this lightning rod for online anger. And that's something that I was really struck by kind of investigating this case in particular, that on social media, there are kind of two things that have to exist alongside one another. There's the fierce support, the fans, the people who are sending you presents and these teddy bears and all these things that Julia was showing to me. And then also the people sending you horrible threats, abuse. And, you know, very much the lesson that she learned was that social media was not the place to post this. She really is sorry about that, because it just really, really harmed everyone involved. And there just aren't the guardrails in place to protect people necessarily. I got in touch with all the social media companies about this, X, Instagram, TikTok, and none of them commented directly on the case, but they all have policies to deal with disinformation and hate. But unfortunately for Julia and for everyone harmed by this kind of case, that's a bit too late.
She's not the only person you've spoken to, is she? There are several other cases that are extraordinary.
There are. So each of them kind of focuses on a different issue that we might encounter on social media. This one is very much about impersonation. The other episode that's available today is about conspiracy theories. There's a man from Northern Ireland who was on holiday in Las Vegas. He got caught up in one of the biggest mass shootings in US history. And when he returned home, he became convinced by one account of conspiracy theories about the tragedy he'd lived through. And other episodes, which will be coming out soon, look at AI-generated content, particularly audio, which is very convincing, tracking down the deepfake creators and the harm that can cause, in this case involving the London Mayor Sadiq Khan, and also footballers' trolls, which we talk about a lot, but who experience huge volumes of abuse, and actually tracking them down and working out whether, you know, although this all sounds quite not the happiest of topics, actually it's important to investigate the horrible stuff on social media because it has a real world consequence. And in this case, each of these episodes does try and find out whether understanding and forgiveness is possible, because we all want a happy ending, or a kind of happy ending.
Yeah, we heard this morning on the programme from Rebecca Ramsey and her son Dylan. You might remember this story if you're watching at home. He drowned in a quarry back in 2011. And Rebecca has told the BBC that she's discovered that somebody is impersonating him on TikTok, that somebody's created an account claiming that he's still alive. I mean, it's hard to imagine how upsetting that is for a mum, a grieving mum, to see something like that all those years later. It's
so distressing. And I think, unfortunately, and I spend far too much time in the worst bits of social media, but this happens so frequently, and particularly for the people who are living through the very worst times, who have lost someone, who have survived tragedies, all kinds of other kind of just the worst things you could imagine. For them to then be targeted in this way on social media is not just awful, but it's really quite frequent. And so a lot of this is about, you know, holding the social media companies to account, asking them difficult questions about why this content exists, which that report really did, but also being able to understand how this unfolds and why people do what they do. And in some ways, I think I've spent so long banging on the doors of the social media companies saying, why is this happening? You know, here's what I've exposed, that this time I've kind of said, right, maybe if we can all understand why this happens, as a society, we can perhaps better protect ourselves from it.
I think there's a lot of people watching this morning who are glad that you're keeping banging. So thank you so much for coming in.
It's worth the trolls.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, but thank you so much for coming in.
And Mariana's podcast, Why Do You Hate Me, is available now on BBC Sounds.